Hello and welcome to the Arbitration Conversation. The Arbitration Conversation in this go-round is going to look at Pakistan and arbitration in Pakistan with a true leader who's a dual qualified lawyer in New York and Pakistan, and has also founded and been one of the first founding members, president for the Center for International Investment and Commercial Arbitration in Pakistan, Rana Sajjad. Rana, thank you so much for taking time with us.
Thank you for having me.
So I guess I wanted to start off just with your background. You're a dual qualified lawyer. You've been practicing in the space of international and investment arbitration, and you decide you're going to be the president and founder of this very important arbitration center. Maybe you want to explain a little bit about your journey, what sort of brought that to bear, and a little bit about the goals and vision for the center.
Sure. So the idea of CIICA came about around 6 years ago. So I used to follow the news reports regarding Pakistan's involvement in international arbitration cases. And I used to get frustrated based on what I saw and the very sort of a glaring lack of understanding of international arbitration in Pakistan. So I used to write some op-eds in some Pakistani newspapers. And then I realized that, writing op-eds only goes so far. And at some point, we need to have a platform, a formal institution on the basis of which we can have discussions on relevant international arbitration issues. So that's how the idea came about. I was actually in the US. I reached out to George Berman, who was the Columbia Law School professor, my alma mater.
That's really fun. That's a great connection.
I think Pakistan, and then we launched it in 2015 April.
Wow, that's really neat. I know George Berman as well. Had the opportunity to teach on a program with him. He's a really great international arbitrator himself. So how did this sort of development, as it's gone through the years, have there been any changes that you've noticed?
I'm sorry, I think your voice was breaking up. I didn't catch the last part of the question.
I just asked, going back to the development and thinking about sort of the beginning years and your vision and bringing to bear education and information about how international arbitration works. I was asking any changes that you've seen over the years with respect to the center. I mean, you first establish it, then what has happened since?
Oh, sure. So what we've done in the past few years, of course, is organize some conferences. Recently, we organized some webinars as well with the focus on relevant issues. So, of course, as I said, the Pakistan state is involved in a couple of important international arbitration cases. So we covered those. We analyzed some of the issues. And then, of course, one of the issues that we discussed is the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is a part of the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. There's a lot of excitement here in Pakistan about this investment. But our concern is that, we need to have a proper mechanism for resolving these disputes. So we've organized conferences on that as well. Besides these conferences, we've organized some training workshops, one in collaboration with CIICA. That was a few years ago. We also have launched a young arbitration group whose focus, as the name suggests, is the younger lot. So we want to build capacity, raise awareness of arbitration among the younger lawyers, business owners, engineers, and government officials, because we believe to sort of address this problem early on. If you're younger, you're more open to new ideas, and it's easier for you to understand these concepts. So we've launched that as well. We've organized some other training workshops also. We've also formally launched a legislative reforms committee, because I believe that in Pakistan, you can't just have an arbitration center and just have conferences and training workshops. You need to have an updated modern legal framework for international arbitration. And so for that, we formally launched a committee last year, which is currently working on reforms. That is something we've done. So yeah, it's a fairly ambitious undertaking in that sense. We're trying to update the laws. We're trying to build capacity. We're trying to raise awareness. And of course, alongside, we're offering arbitration mediation services as well.
Right. So going back to this question of updating the laws, I mean, that's a really ambitious program, as you said. What do you think are some of the main key updates that are necessary in order to really further the movement with respect to international arbitration in Pakistan?
So a couple of the provisions in the domestic arbitration law that stand out, not just for me, but for a lot of arbitration practitioners. One is the mandatory requirement for making every arbitral award a rule of the court. Now, what that requires is that whenever an award is rendered by an arbitrator, it has to be taken to a court of competent jurisdiction and essentially be endorsed by the court as a valid award, which of course does not make any sense at all. The whole idea of arbitrating dispute is to stay away from the court. And especially when the arbitration has been conducted properly, it has been completed, the award has been read, why do you have to go to court? So a lot of people take issue with that. So that is one issue that needs to be resolved. Another is regarding a stay of proceedings. Now, on the face of it, there's nothing wrong with that particular provision. But what ends up happening is that the courts interpret it in a way that they end up staying the arbitral proceedings instead of their own court proceedings and refer the matter to arbitration. Now, it's a case of misinterpretation. And this is where I think the capacity building of judges needs to happen as well, because although having a modern legal framework is important, but I believe that unless and until you build capacity of the judges, it will be very difficult to have arbitration sort of get off the ground here in Pakistan in an effective way. So even with those reforms, I think alongside simultaneously, we have to build capacity of the judges, because what ends up happening is a turf war essentially. They think that, these arbitral proceedings have to be stayed. We have jurisdiction. So if they're trained in how to accurately apply the laws, I think that would solve a lot of the problems as well.
That's really interesting because, it kind of goes back to an age-old battle that has been going on since, even with the Federal Arbitration Act in the US, that originally was one of the main issues, this idea of sort of, as you say, a jurisdictional battle. So you're absolutely right. That's really interesting. It kind of makes me think also about sort of how the New York Convention comes into play. Has that been discussed at all with respect to how it might coincide with your domestic arbitration law?
So thankfully, we have enacted the New York Convention. That was back in 2011. It's been about 10 years. The same year, this was especially for Pakistan's international arbitration framework, we also enacted the Exit Convention. So as far as the international arbitration regime is concerned, it is, I think, fairly developed, but we still need to enact the ancestral model law. That is one thing that is missing. Now, in terms of the enforcement of foreign arbitral awards, a couple of years ago, there was some good news coming out of Lahore, the city where I'm based, where the High Court actually enforced a couple of arbitral awards. Now, for people outside of Pakistan, it doesn't sound something extraordinary. But in terms of Pakistani jurisprudence over the years, this was sort of a bright spot because we got to see a High Court enforcing foreign arbitral awards. So I think because the enactment, although it's just been 10 years, but I think with the passage of time, we'll be noticing that the judges have developed a better understanding of how to apply that law. And I think we're seeing better outcomes because of that.
Wow, no, that's exciting. It's also exciting that your center is working with the young, newer lawyers, because I tend to agree, my students as well, they're all willing to sort of think of new ideas and get involved. So I really applaud the work that you're doing at your center. It sounds really exciting.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Well, I told you I wouldn't take up too much of your time. I know you're very busy. I just wanted to thank you for taking time with me. It's really interesting and important work that you're doing. So thank you.
No, of course. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure having this conversation. So thanks again.
Have a good day.